150s, disassemble them all to match one disassembled 747 as far as parts go. Like I said, I don't think they meant any disrespect. I don't think he meant to disrespect them at all or to kind of throw it in their face. You guys are cute with your little trucks. What he really meant to draw attention to was the fact that it really doesn't matter how big or how small a machine is, how many parts or how few. What matters is that all of those parts are working together with each other. And that was the sort of mentality he wanted to bring to the Ford Motor Company. It didn't matter if he was going to be running a mom and pop store with 3 employees or if it was going to be something massive like Boeing or Ford. His goal was always that all of the employees and management, all the different layers and levels, would all be working in tandem and together with each other. And that's the same mindset that our church has had for a long, long time here, especially when it comes to Christian education. This is not something that's meant to be done solely by different congregations or solely by different families. That's certainly a part of it. That's the base level that God calls us to do when it comes to Christian education, is to make sure we're taking care of our own households and our own communities. But he also calls us to work together as a church body as well. And so that's what I have the privilege of speaking with you about today, is the specific system that our church has put in place to encourage and to train future called workers so that those generations down the line don't lose the gospel, but instead are brought up in the truth of God's words, just as we are today. So, a little bit about me before I talk about the system. I am Pastor Sharf's brother-in-law. I'm married to number 13 out of 14, so a little bit down the rung a little bit. But we were married in 2014, so we got 7 years coming up in about a week here, which is a good reminder that I need to finish my anniversary gift. I'll put it up here. She and I got married in 2014, right after my first year at the seminary. I have kind of a boring ministry story. I was a traditional student, went to Luther Prep, so the other high school that encourages pastor and teacher training. Didn't take any gap years between high school and college, or college and the seminary, just 12 straight years, nothing but good, solid Christian education. I did a few trips and things like that, but no extended time overseas. Kind of boring. If you asked me, what made you decide you wanted to be a pastor? I don't honestly know if I could tell you. I'll talk more about that later, that it's not usually a lightning bolt moment for a lot of people. It's the slow, steady encouragement over many years as, growing up as kids into young adulthood. There's not really much to say. I don't know, we have 2 kids. One's a 2-year-old, one's 2 months old. It seems like whenever I come down to Camp South, it's on the heels of having a baby, so that's always fun. I'm always ready to not have sleep anyway, so it works out really well. But it's always been a joy to come to any congregation, but especially here. This is my 3rd time preaching at Abide in Grace, just getting to know everyone a little bit better, spending time with some family, and now, church family as well. So thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your time. If you have questions throughout this little presentation, I'll have a few questions that I'll ask you, but if you have questions for me, please just speak out. Don't feel like you need to raise your hand. I know we're talking about education, but I don't want it to feel like a classroom. So please don't feel like you're going to throw off any trains of thought that usually jump right back on the track. I'm still young enough now that you hopefully won't deviate me too much from the game plan. But anyway, let's talk about this whole system that our church has set up. I guess first of all, how familiar are you with Lutheran education in America since the 1800s? Probably not much. That's okay. Historically, the Lutheran Church really has put a lot into 2 big things: music and during worship in the church, and education. And nothing except education could be more pronounced in those 1800s except for pastors. At that point, a lot of German immigrants had come over to the upper Midwest, but that flow of German pastors being trained in those German theological seminaries was slowly starting to wane. Not only that, but some of their doctrine was also starting to become slightly skewed from the truth of God's word. And so the church bodies in the different upper Midwest states, before it was the Wells, you had the Michigan Synod, the Wisconsin Synod, and the Minnesota Synod. And so they were all kind of separate entities. Well, they all thought, maybe we should start doing this education thing kind of homegrown in our communities here in the New World, instead of relying on these old theological seminaries that were, again, starting to skew from God's word slightly in the old country. And so most of those state synods ended up setting up their own, at least seminaries. They didn't quite have the college or the high school levels yet, but they at least had their own theological seminaries. Now, when all of those church bodies, or most of them, decided to merge together to form what is now the Wells, they decided, well, having multiple seminaries can sometimes cause issues depending on the faculty and lots of small little things. So they wanted to streamline everything and simply have one college and one seminary where all of the teachers and pastors would come from. And that's where the Michigan Synod kind of hit a snag. They were very proud of the seminary that they had established in 1885 and wanted to keep it as its own pastor training school. So they actually didn't join the other states for about 10 years. And finally, they realized the benefits far outweighed the potential negatives to having multiple seminaries and came back into the fold. They kept the name Michigan Lutheran Seminary, but agreed that it would serve as one of the 2 high school level pastor-teacher training schools. So if you're confused why there's a Michigan Lutheran Seminary and a Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, there is a bit of history there about the turn of from the 1800s to the 1900s. So we've retained the name because Michiganders are very proud, I've come to know and realize. So they wanted to keep at least the name, if nothing else. But yes, now it serves as one of the 2 high schools. So a little confusing. But Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary is the seminary where you get your vicars from, where Pastor Scharf and I both graduated from. So a little confusing, hopefully less so now. So I'd like to show you the schools a little bit. Obviously, our synod is kind of centered in the upper Midwest, so all 4 of the schools are also centered in the upper Midwest, and I do need to move my icons around a little bit. Sometimes when I travel, they move, but so Michigan Lutheran Seminary is not actually on the Ohio-Pennsylvania border. It's closer up to the thumb here in Michigan. So that's the one high school. Luther Prep is located about halfway between Madison and Milwaukee in Watertown, Wisconsin. So those are the 2 high schools. About half of those graduates continue their training over here at Martin Luther College in south central Minnesota, a small town called New Ulm. And after that, the pastoral candidates spend an additional 3 years in the classroom plus a year out in the field over in Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary just north of Milwaukee. So overall, it's a fairly robust system. If you're a traditional student like me, I was in the Lutheran schools from kindergarten through, what would that be, like 20th grade-ish, whenever you graduate? A long time. And it is a long road, but it's also a lot of fun, too. That's something that I like to tell the grade school kids who can't even know what they're having for dinner, and they can't think 12 years ahead. I couldn't either, so just enjoy it and go along and let the Lord work through his word in your heart and let the encouragement of his people work on your brain, and things generally turn out pretty well. But everyone has their own story of how they get through, and plenty of kids go straight from a different high school, whether it's Lutheran or public, directly to the college. We have plenty of seminary students that come from all other cultures that are part of the Pastoral Studies Institute. That's a small program that the real seminary has to help these pastors coming from different cultures get their training and then get back out to their people. So it's many different avenues to get to becoming a pastor, teacher, or staff minister. I just happen to take kind of the standard one. I wish I had more experience, but that's okay. I have to rely on other people for their experience now. Anyway, if you're able to come up and visit any of the schools, I highly recommend doing that. These are your schools. Part of your mission offerings do go to support the faculty, the maintenance staff, just the facilities themselves, as well as tuition assistance and all sorts of different things that we're able to offer our students. So these really are your schools. So please come up and visit. See what your offerings are able to do with the Lord's blessing at any one of them. Michigan Lutheran Seminary, again located in Saginaw. You've got Luther Preparatory School in Watertown, Martin Luther College in New Ulm, and kind of the capstone for the pastors at least would be Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary. Anytime I show this picture at grade schools, I always have someone whisper Hogwarts to their friend. And it is in fact based on a castle in Germany, based on the Wartburg Castle, where Luther translated the New Testament from Greek into German, so people besides the priests at the time could actually read God's word. So there is some significance, and there's some relevance in calling it Hogwarts. It's very castle-y. But yeah, those are the 4 schools. A picture doesn't really do them justice, though. Like I said, if you have the opportunity to come up and visit, or who knows, do a full tour of all 4, I don't know. I think it'd be a lot of fun and very beneficial for you and for them. We love having visitors from all over the place because it gives us a chance to thank you in person for all the support that you give us, whether it's offerings, prayers, encouragement to the kids around here. You're a huge part of this, and we want to be able to thank you in person if possible. As you think about this system and the fact that along with just these 4 schools, we have 25 other Lutheran high schools scattered about the country, over 300 grade schools. I'm not even sure the number of early childhood centers anymore because they keep popping up so frequently all over the church. As you think about all those different opportunities for kids to be educated in God's word by professionally trained pastors and teachers, along with the support of their own families, I mean, what blessings do you see the system bringing to our church body as a whole? You guys have a unique perspective, especially being in the vicar program for as many years as you have been. But what are some blessings that you think this brings? This is one of my questions for you, so then you can ask me one after. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you guys kind of are like adjunct faculty to a degree. I don't know if you realize that or not, but those guys are learning from Pastor Scharf, yes, but they're also learning from you as they get to know you and how to serve a congregation. So thank you in general. I mean, I did not vicar here, but I know the guy that did in my class, and he learned a lot, just like we all learned a lot. So thank you for your help in that matter. Any other blessings you can think of? The vicar program is obviously a huge one, yeah. Mm-hmm. I would agree. There's certainly an aspect of kind of what's the word? I can't think of it, but an institutional knowledge that kind of has been passed down, and tradition is sure. No, I think you're onto something too with tradition. I just always think it's important to point out that our tradition is just always based on God's word. So because God's word doesn't change, well then we don't change either. But yes, it's easy to see that though in other churches, how they kind of sway with the cultural winds a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. So sort of a solidarity of doctrine from top to bottom. That's certainly a blessing. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, even in our small church body, there are differences, stylistic or architectural or whatever you want to say, but the center, the core of everything, the belief, the doctrine that is taught, yeah, that remains the same, no matter where you are in a Wells church, absolutely. And you see that even in just slightly larger church bodies that have had issues when they have, the multiple seminaries, the multiple sort of training systems. There's enough of a difference that, large rifts have occurred back in, I won't say history, but decades ago now still. But we've been blessed to not have that issue yet, having everyone go through the same program together. Yeah. One that I know I've experienced is just the fellowship, the brotherhood, sisterhood aspect that you get. I didn't realize it when I graduated from the seminary in 2017, but there were 9 guys from my class in high school that I'd known since we were 13 or 14 years old. There were more than that when we started, but guys did years abroad or took years off or whatever it was. But that's a good chunk. That was a third of our class that I'd been with for the last 12 years. Having that sort of bond just over the length of time really is incredible. And then once you get out into the ministry, generally you're a little bit far flung from each other, but to still have those friendships that you can rely upon, people that you can trust to bounce ideas off of, or if you're struggling in some way, shape, or form, and they're in the same sort of job, they get it. You don't have to try to explain things to them maybe as you would have to as someone who's not as familiar with the position. So that's a huge thing too, is that sort of fellowship that our called workers get to share. Not that they're all best friends with each other, that's impossible, but that they do have, at least if nothing else, like a common background and a common education with each other. That would be another one. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I agree with all of them. It brings those blessings and many more that we either haven't quite realized or can't quite articulate as well as we'd like to. But it is an incredible blessing that God gives us through these 4 schools, and then also through the entire kind of Lutheran education system that we have. Yes? And circling back to what was said earlier with the vicar program, how you guys kind of have to, you're part of the teaching as well. That's also just a good experience to get out of the bubble. Sometimes you have people that grew up in the upper Midwest and that's kind of where they've been. So to get out to a place like Covington or anywhere around the U.S. where we have these WELS congregations is also a benefit. You are a benefit in multiple ways to them, just as they are to you. It's this sort of reciprocal blessing that God has given us, where we bless each other in so many different ways. So, yeah, it really is an incredible system. And I don't know if when they started this, they had all these things in mind. I'm sure that they were up there. They're much smarter than I am. But it's certainly something that we've grown to realize more and more as times have changed, as they tend to do. The whole purpose of these 4 schools, I know I said we have multiple grade schools and other high schools around that serve as general Christian education. They're all excellent schools. I would recommend them to anyone. But these schools have a special purpose in particular, and that's to help with these numbers. I'll read them off because I think the angle's a little strange. But right now, this number is not quite accurate. It's closer to about 112 pastoral vacancies in our church body, so 112 churches that are still looking for a pastor to fill that role in their church. That ends up being about 10%, which is a fair amount. That 1 out of every 10 churches in our church body still in need of a pastor. I'm not sure what the exact number is as far as teachers go, but there's always going to be some vacancies as people retire or take calls to different churches. But 110 is, I won't say it's a cause for concern, but it's something that we're keeping tabs on as well. Especially as the baby boomer generation is starting to retire, and classes that were really big back when they started are now, not quite half of what they were, but significantly smaller. So simply, not by attrition or anything like that, but just the simple, natural way of how things go. We've got lots of people retiring, not so many going into the ministry at the moment. However, we have found that things do tend to go in curves. As you look at some of the classes entering Martin Luther College, we're looking at, I believe, 54 pastor track candidates that will be sophomores now, not freshmen, but sophomores. So that's a good thing, that we have classes upwards in the 50s. Average class size in the last 10 years has been closer to the high 20s, low 30s. So to have 50 start off strong, I'm sure that a few will go and do different things and gap years and all that, but it's a great start, so that's the curve kind of coming back a little bit. So I don't mean to put this on this to scare anybody. Otherwise I would scare myself a little bit. But it's simply to recognize there's an urgency in this worker training that we do. There's an urgency in everything that we do as Christians. Since we don't know exactly how long we have or how long it is until Jesus returns, we just know we have this wonderful message that we want to get to other people. So 110 churches that we're looking to fill. In I believe it's a Rasmussen poll about 3 years ago, they said that they found, if you correlate it out, there's about 66 million people in the U.S. who identify as a nun. Not the habit-wearing, convent-wearing, how do you solve a problem like Maria kind of nun, but someone who has zero religious affiliation whatsoever. Whether it's organized or not organized religion, they don't want anything to do with it. 66 million out of about 350 million. So if my math serves me correctly, that's about 1 in 5. 1 in 5 Americans that are just not religious or spiritual in the slightest. That number has risen significantly since the 1990s as well. So again, not to scare anybody, but just to let you know there are trends towards that are away from the Bible in general, or religion in general. So that's something else that we keep in mind, that it's not just about our church body, but it's about our church body reaching out to the people around us in our country, but also around the world too. 5.1 billion people would not be lumped into the Christian camp. Granted, inside that Christian camp, I believe we've included upwards of 1 billion Catholics, as well as other Protestant, sects isn't the right word, Protestant divisions, churches, denominations. Thank you very much. Sorry. Yeah, mush mouth. So that's just Christianity in general. That's what we believe, that the Holy Christian Church is not just the WELS. It comes from all these different denominations. Anywhere the gospel is preached, you have Christians there. So that's just a broad number. But even with that broad number of almost, I believe it's 2.5 billion Christians, we're still kind of outnumbered 2 to 1 by people who have no clue who Jesus is or have heard about him but want nothing to do with him. So because of all these numbers, whether it's in our church body, our country, or in our world, we are always striving to reach out with the gospel. And for a lot of times that's individual Christians and individual churches, but it's also one of the main roles of pastors and teachers as well, is to reach out to others. Thank you very much. There's a purpose, though, beyond just those numbers. There's a purpose that God sends us with. He talks about it, Jesus himself talks about it in Matthew chapter 9, where he says, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into those harvest fields." And it's kind of a fun saying where Jesus doesn't complete the thought. He says, "Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers," and you almost want him to say, "and he will send them out." He doesn't say that in this verse, but as you look around at other parts of the gospel, he does say, ask and it will be given you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open. The prayer of the righteous is powerful. So when he says, "Ask the Lord of the harvest," he means it. That's something that we can all do. It's an easy way to support not just each other as individual Christians, but also called workers and the schools that train them. The other purpose that we've been given, though, comes from Paul's letter to his young companion Timothy. Paul was kind of like what Pastor Shuck is to all the vicars. He was training Timothy up to be a pastor on his own one day. And what he said to Timothy was, "The things you have heard me say, those doctrines of the Christian church, entrust those to reliable people who will be qualified to teach others." And that's something that we strive to do as a school, to make sure that the candidates we send on to the college and to the seminary are as qualified as possible to teach others. In our case, as a high school, we have the broadest base of students, and we're giving them the broadest base of education. But we also want to make sure that once they get to the college and to the seminary, that they will be trained and qualified in order to teach these truths of God's word. So we have this broad purpose of simply sending workers out into the harvest field, but also a slightly narrower purpose of making sure that we're doing our part to make sure they're ready to go out into those harvest fields as well. And this is the exact purpose of MLS stated by our governing board, and our mission statement is to equip young Christians for lives of service to their Lord and to encourage them to continue training for the public ministry of the gospel. That's one of the fun things about being at this high school level. At the college and at the seminary, pretty much everyone is on the exact same route. They know exactly what they're going to do. At the high school level, though, everyone's still figuring it out. At least the students are still figuring it out. Maybe some of the adults too. But the students are still wondering, what are my gifts? How can I serve the Lord? Is it as a pastor or a teacher? Is it as a ditch digger, a video game designer, an engineer, an EMT? There's so many different ways that God gives us to use our gifts to his glory. And really, he's fine with any of them. So that's something that we try to tell our kids as much as possible, while also encouraging them to consider the pastoral and teaching ministry, because those are also so vital to the church. So it's a fun balance game that we get to play. We don't want it to seem like we're just shoving ministry into their mouths, force-feeding it. But we also want to make sure that we are achieving our purpose of encouraging them as much as possible without being annoying. That it is something that they should be considering, and that many of them could do very, very well. So that is our specific purpose as a school. You'll find a similar purpose with Luther Prep, our sister high school in Wisconsin. And as you get upwards into the college level and the seminary level, you'll find the purpose becomes more and more exact as the schooling and education gets more and more exact. But I will say, being at the high school is pretty fun. You kind of know where the rubber meets the road a little bit as these kids figure out who they are and what they'd like to do with what they've been given. So here's how MLS works, just as a whole. We've kind of started off with the broad system. Now we're going to zoom in a little bit about how Michigan Lutheran Seminary works. Now, our unspoken purpose, or our less official purpose, is that we try to build well-rounded and faithful Christians through academic, extracurricular, social, and spiritual growth. We can't force the kids to grow in any of these things, so it's our job simply to provide them opportunities to grow and to encourage them to be involved. I guess first of all, it's a school. We want them to be educated. Whether they go on to the ministry or whether they go on to any number of other vocations and careers, we want them to be successful and be set up for success. We consider ourselves a college prep curriculum, so we do have high expectations for our students, but we follow up with those high expectations with a high level of support for the students that maybe don't feel as strong in certain academic subjects. So between a different advisor that each student has every year, peer tutoring, and then also counseling in multiple subjects. We call it counseling. It's mostly just help from the teacher after class. But there's this wide net of academic support which helps them to reach those expectations that we've set. Our average GPA is about a 3.51, and I know you can compare them with state averages or national averages. I don't like to do that. I just like to throw it up there and say, yeah, 3.5 is pretty solid. So we like the 3.5. That's about an 8-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, which is considerably smaller than most public schools and, to be honest, most larger private schools as well. Some people see that as a negative, that we're not able to offer them as many opportunities or extracurriculars. We see it as a positive in that students can get the individualized help that they need. We do have certain policies that are set up, but a lot of the policies that we have, whether it's academic or campus life, are built so that they can be adapted to an individual's needs. So there's maybe not an automatic, oh, you hit a 2.0, you're done, you're out of here. It's, oh, okay, let's see what the issue is here. We can work with you through this and hopefully get those grades back to where they should be so that you're using your gifts as faithfully as you can. So the fact that we have a smaller student body actually we see as a massive benefit. About 94% of our graduates each year go on to college or into the armed forces. The other 6% generally go directly into the workforce in some way, shape, or form. About 50% of our grads go on to Martin Luther College. So that would mean about 44 would go into, we have multiple community schools that they go to. Saginaw Valley State University is a big one. But we also have kids that go into the larger universities, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, depending on what their degree is and their aptitude at school. So we're very happy that they're able to do that and that they feel like they're set up for success, not just in high school, but also in the next part of their education. And then we're also working on incorporating more of the STEM fields into our curriculum. That's something that has been trending a lot in education, not even recently, but actually in the past probably 15 years or so. It stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. However, the fun thing is they keep adding letters to STEM. I believe now it's STEAM. They've added art into it. And then they're going to add R, so it's STREAM, which is reading, which eventually ends up getting back to the liberal arts education that we kind of have offered anyway. So I don't know if it's a circle meets the square or what came first, the chicken or the egg. Either way, we're trying our best to keep up with these educational trends that seem to be not just fluff, not just fads, but really do help the kids, just to give them a different way to learn. I think that's a big part of the STEM classes. It's a lot of hands-on activities. So you're not just seeing in the textbook, this is how hydraulics work. You're actually making something hydraulic powered. I think they were trying to pick up an empty soda can with a cardboard arm all through syringes and tubes. It's very fun stuff. But yes?
100% residential?
Not quite. It's about 60-40. 60% of kids will live in the dorms, about 40% will commute in and out. Actually, this is a great opportunity for me to stop talking for a little bit, and I would encourage you to take a look at the fast facts sheets. Grab one back here. Thanks. Helps give you a little bit of a statistical look anyway at the school. No, you're fine. Does anyone else need? Most of the faculty lives within about a block or three of campus. We're 3 blocks from campus. A lot of people live very close. There are dorm supervisors that live in the dorms. They have separate apartments that are attached to the dorms. So they're with the high school kids 24/7. They're mostly recent graduates of either the college or the seminary. Kind of serve as a parent/older sibling figure in the dorms, someone who can keep the peace but also be a listening ear if something comes up. I don't know if you remember your high school days. I certainly try to forget mine, but things tend to burn a little bit brighter. Break up with a girl, and it's terrible. I'm never going to find a girl again, blah, blah, blah. And then, 2 days later, you're fine. So sometimes the storms in life seem a little bit more stormy. A couple of things I would love to highlight on the fast fact sheet that really just kind of catch my attention would be, first of all, the financial assistance that's awarded. That's almost $300,000, and again, that's coming from all the different WELS congregations that submit a portion of their offerings to these synodical schools. So you're not just funding a teacher or a janitor or a new turf athletic facility or something like that. You're actually helping students who otherwise would be unable to attend a school like this. And so we try to dole that out as best as we can. It's all need-based at our school, so parents do have to fill out an application so we can help whoever needs it the most. The really nice thing, it's not a number on here, about 80% of our students do not come from called worker households. So we're looking at potential first-generation pastors and teachers. A lot of the times you'll see, oh, my dad was a pastor and his dad was a pastor, and that's great. I mean, that's awesome to have that sort of family tradition. But for whatever reason, in the past about decade or so, we've had a majority of our students coming from non-called worker families. So we see that as a great opportunity, and you can tell that God's word is working throughout all of these different congregations as they're encouraged to give this a shot. One other number I'd love to point out is the 91% student participation. 91% of our students are involved in at least one extracurricular. So whether that's drama, music, athletics, there's a number of different clubs and activity groups they can be a part of. The crazy thing to me is I ran the numbers last year now, but if you bump that up to, I think it's four or five extracurriculars, the number has only dropped down to like 74. So 3 out of every 4 kids are in at least 4 extracurriculars, whether it's 2 sports and a choir and a band, 2 sports and theater, a sport, theater, choir. I mean, the kids are very, very active, and that's a culture that they have built themselves. As the faculty, we encourage them to do something. It's a great way to meet new friends, to kind of expand your own boundaries a little bit. I'm not much of a runner, but I'll encourage a kid to run cross country because, hey, push yourself a little bit, see what you're capable of. That's a good thing. That's the sort of encouragement we give them. But they've really built the culture of participating all by themselves in all sorts of different extracurriculars as well. As you're glancing through this, has anything come across you that you have a question about, anything that's unclear? Then I've just got one more number to highlight it's not on here, unfortunately. But I mentioned earlier the now incoming sophomore class at MLC is 54 students for pastor track. 36 of those students came from Luther Prep and from Michigan Lutheran Seminary. 13 from MLS and, 39, 13 and 26. 39 of 54 came from the 2 prep schools. And that, if nothing else, shows that sort of encouragement that those kids get at those schools really does help. It helps push them along and at least dip their feet in the water at the college level and get their next glimpse of what it could be to be a pastor. I'm not sure what the teacher numbers are, but the fact that 2 schools are producing that amount of potential pastoral candidates really is a unique, special thing. And I see that personally as, all right, we're on the right track. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're doing what the church as a whole has called us to do at this school. So it's kind of a fun little tidbit. The Fine Arts is a massive program at MLS, again, with all the participation. It's not just meatheads doing 3 sports and lifting in the weight room. A lot of times you'll have the quarterback or the starting point guard is also the lead in the musical, something weird like that. It's kind of awesome to see them flex all these different muscles that they have, whether it's on the stage or on the field. So there are 5 separate choirs that we offer, freshmen, sophomores. There are 2 upperclassmen choirs, one that stays on campus, one that travels. And then there's also an a cappella group. There's a full symphonic band as well as smaller instrument groups as well as a theater program that puts on 2 productions a year, and then piano and organ lessons that are, no delicate way to say this, they're required for 2 years. The Lutheran Church has such a deep appreciation of music that even if you're not the most musical person, I kind of plunk around with one finger like a chicken trying to pick up some feed. So I appreciate the people that can play the piano. Because I realize how much time and effort it takes to get there and to stay at that level. So that's part of it, is just a general appreciation of music and musicians. But then also, for the ones that are a little bit more adept than me, they are able to help their future congregations as far as worship goes as well. So there's a practical benefit as well. Along with the Fine Arts, we do have a fairly robust athletic program. We offer 11 different sports split between the boys and girls. The one that's newest is actually a hockey team. We were able to co-op a team with another local high school. So we only have about 3 kids on the team of 18, so we're a little shyly represented at this point, but we're encouraging more. It's just in its 2nd year, but it's kind of a fun new sport that we're able to have that seems very Michigan-y, that you have a hockey team in Michigan. It's a good thing. But yes, otherwise we have multiple sports depending on the season that you're in, between football, volleyball, cross country, basketball, wrestling, baseball, softball, track, all sorts of different things, ways for the kids to flex their muscles, to get a little bit more body control, to get bigger and stronger, all good things for life, no matter what you end up doing. There's also an intramural program for the people like me who aren't as athletic. I can say it now without hanging my head too low, but I went to a grade school of 48 kids in Northern Virginia, and I was the best basketball player there. And then I went to Luther Prep and had a class of 120, and I was not the best basketball player there. So I played my entire high school and college career simply on the intramural courts, playing against my schoolmates instead of actually on the team. But it is still fun, in some cases more fun, because there's no wind sprints involved. So I'll take it. I'll take what I can get. But the intramural program is there as well for the students that maybe don't consider themselves quite as athletic, but still want to be out there and getting their sweat on. A big part of MLS is something that we call the MLS family. That's a reference to the culture that we've built. Being a smaller school and having kids living on campus with each other certainly lends itself automatically to that. I did the math a couple of years ago now, and the average amount of time an MLS student spends on campus, even with the ones that are there 24 hours a day, comes out to about 13 hours, even the commuting students. Depending on how practice schedules fall, rehearsal schedules, they will generally get there about 7 to 7:30 and won't leave until in between 7 and 9 o'clock at night. Maybe they'll duck home for dinner and come back if they live close enough, but for the most part, our kids are around each other about 12 hours a day. And so if you do the math over the course of 4 years, that ends up being upwards of 14,000 hours that they spend with their friends. And as you can imagine, there are times when they kind of get on each other's nerves over this 14,000 hours, but certainly way more than that are the times that they are bonding with each other and starting to form those friendships that maybe they carry on to MLC, maybe not. I still have friends from high school that chose to not go into the ministry. Ran into a couple of people in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin a few weeks ago, which is also a very Wisconsin name, Oconomowoc. Hadn't seen him for upwards about 6-7 years now. Had a conversation, almost like a day had not passed. And that was just from those 4 years of high school that we had. You can only imagine what it's like once you get to the college and the seminary level as well. But that family aspect is something that we certainly try to promote and amongst the student body as much as we can. Because a lot of these kids do come from far away, whether they're international students or they're coming from out of state or maybe just the other side of the state. Their support system that they had all through grade school of parents and close friends, I won't say it gets stripped away because it's impossible to strip anything away with this, right? But it's not as close as it once was. And so to have those friends right there who you're able to talk to or are able to help you work through different things that come up is a huge, valuable part of anyone's life, but especially when you think about the high school years and how tough they can actually be, or at least seem to be. To have that sort of family ties with so many other students, classmates, roommates even, it's a very special thing that they have with the MLS family. And that also follows through with the faculty as well. When my wife and I first moved there, we had an embarrassingly large amount of stuff for two people that had not been married that long. But about 3/4 of the faculty actually showed up to help us unload a U-Haul. When I first heard MLS family, I thought it was kind of corny, and then they helped me unload all my junk. And I realized they mean it. It was July, it was hot, it was stuff that they didn't care about that wasn't theirs, but they all showed up anyway. So it is a thing that's not just amongst the student body, but it really is the culture of the campus as a whole, this MLS family idea. And of course, all that is based on the fact that we do share the same faith. All that time spent in practice and in theater, in band, whatever extracurriculars, whatever classroom activities you're in, all the kids there believe the same thing. They're all trying their hardest, not because they want to win glory for themselves or their family name, or they want a plaque or a trophy. Those things would be nice, sure, but they're there to bring glory to their God and to hone the skills that He's given them, not for themselves, but to serve each other. So that's another big part of our campus environment, is the faith that we share as an MLS family. But God did not intend faith to be put up on a shelf and to collect dust. He wants us to put our faith into action. We are a school that encourages the ministry, so we want to show the kids what ministry can look like. We do that through a variety of groups and trips and different things that the kids can participate in throughout their time at MLS. So one of the big things is we have 9 chapel services throughout the week. Every morning, Monday to Friday, and then evenings right before bedtime from Monday to Thursday. There's a campus pastor who plans them. There are some faculty that help out with preaching and with some of the accompaniment, but almost everything else is done exclusively by the kids. They help accompany, they form the choirs that sing. They're the ones that do even the simple things, light the candles, collect the offering, usher the kids out so it's not a giant stampede when the bell rings. It's all these small things. It really is like their own little congregation that they have. Seniors have the opportunity to give their own devotion at evening chapel. Upperclassmen boys have the opportunity to read the lessons or not perform the liturgy, but to liturgize. I'm not sure what the right word is, but they'll do the liturgy for a couple mornings a week. So they have these opportunities to see what it's like to stand in front of a group of people, or to kind of work behind the scenes and see all the different things that really make a congregation tick that maybe they didn't quite notice at their home congregation yet. All of our seniors participate in a program called Taste of Ministry. Usually when I talk to like the little kids about this, they think it's something about licking teachers. It's not about licking teachers. That's not COVID friendly or friendly in general. But the seniors all get to tag along with a pastor or a teacher for about 3 full days. Usually for the guys shadowing a pastor, they see a Sunday, a Monday, and a Tuesday. So they see not just what happens here, but they see all the things that happen afterwards or that happen throughout the week, whether it's hospital visits, shut-in calls, knocking on doors. Some guys play golf on Monday, so they get to follow along and see, all right, maybe Monday's a day off. Who knows? What happens? The teachers also get to do the same thing where they follow along with their own teacher for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's kind of a sneak peek at what they could do. Oftentimes, they're asked to help, whether it's in church on Sunday or in the classroom, giving devotions, teaching short, kind of easy lessons. But it gives them an opportunity to see, hey, I can do this. It isn't too bad. Yeah. This is one of our big flagship programs. Luther Prep has a similar one, Project Timothy. We have Project Titus. They're both traveling companions of the Apostle Paul, so you can see the basis for these groups going out and traveling. But multiple groups every summer go out to a different church, generally outside of the Midwest or in some sort of mission setting, to help a church run any number of outreach programs that they have, whether it's a soccer camp, a music camp, just a general camping camp, kind of like Camp South. So we have groups of students and a chaperone that go out and get to embed themselves in a congregation, kind of like a short version of the SMA program. They're out there for maybe a week and a half max, but even in that week and a half, they get to see a lot of things that maybe they've never seen before. A majority of our kids do come from Michigan and Ohio. They've been in a Michigan bubble all their lives. It might be a shock to their system to see what happens in Covington, Georgia, but that shock hopefully sticks up here so that one day when they're in a different congregation, maybe not in Michigan or Ohio, they can bring the lessons that they learned with them and help that church develop their own program. This is all a big system. These 4 schools, all the other schools that our church body supports that don't have the exact same purpose but still serve to educate people in the truths of the Christian church, but it doesn't work without you. And so I'd like to give you just a handful of ways that you can continue to help supporting these schools as you have in the past. The first one's the easiest one, and I would ask that you please pray these words with me together today. Lord of the harvest, give to your church men and women eager to prepare for service in your kingdom. Bless our schools with instructors who encourage and inspire their students to grow in grace and wisdom. Strengthen the resolve of students to complete their training for ministry and send them out in the power of your Spirit. Amen. Thank you very much. That really is all it takes, is a short, simple prayer, and God promises that he hears the prayers of the righteous and that they are in fact powerful. So we appreciate the prayers that you offer on behalf of these schools as well as Christian schools everywhere, and know that we are also praying for you and praying to God in thankfulness for everything that you do as well. One of the other things that you can do to help support schools like MLS or Luther Prep or any of the other ministry training schools would be to look around the pews, whether it's on a Sunday or during one of your summer events, and just see which of these young men or young women look like they could give being a pastor or a teacher a shot. It doesn't mean that they have to be fluent in Greek by the time they're in 7th grade. A lot of times it's as simple as, hey, they're a hard worker, they're personable, they don't take themselves too seriously, but they take what they do seriously. It's these small little things, and as you notice that, I would ask you to then encourage these kids. Maybe it's encouraging them towards ministry. Obviously, from a ministry training school, I'd love it if you encourage them to possibly attend MLS or Luther Prep, but just encourage them to continue being excellent Christian young people, to continue serving God in whatever way they can and using those gifts that he's given them. As I said before, I didn't have a lightning bolt moment to become a pastor. There's no cool story behind it. But as I look back, it becomes a little cooler when I realize it was people in my home congregation when I was 5 or 6 that said, hey, nice job memorizing your line for the children's Christmas service. That's a form of encouragement that just helped me think, even just for a second or two, hey, All right, I can stand in front of a group of people and memorize something and say it. All right, that's part of being a pastor. And it was these encouragements all throughout the years, whether it was from people in my church, my parents, my pastor, my teacher, people at the schools that I attended. It's this whole snowball effect of encouragement. And so I would encourage you to encourage the people here as well, the young people especially, to continue serving God as best they can, but to potentially think about if they could serve God as a full-time called worker. And then the last thing that I would ask you to do is just to continue supporting MLS in whatever way you can, whether that's with your prayers, with your offerings here at church. If you would like to come up and visit, again, we would love to have you up there so that you can see the campus for yourself. I have lots of pictures that I haven't shown, but in the end, pictures are just pictures. I would love for you to come up and see it with your own eyes, to take in the campus, the culture, the kids. It was kind of weird during COVID. It was kind of a ghost town. I hated it. Now that the kids have been back, it's been so much nicer. So I would encourage you to please come up as a church group, as an individual, as a family. We are open for visitors. We would love to have you come up and see all these things for yourself. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry, I've been doing a lot more talking than I probably should. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, what was that? Define nuns. So a nun would be someone, N-O-N-E-S. So that would be someone who does not want to be affiliated with any sort of religious organization. So if you gave them a list, multiple choice of, who would you consider yourself affiliated with, Lutheran, Catholic, Orthodox Greek, or nun, they would check the nun box. Yeah. A little confusing because it's, homophone, so it sounds like a nun. Yeah. Not quite. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it. All of the kids took all my literature at Camp South. They want to read stuff. So I'm sorry I didn't bring any more. I might be able to send some down. But if you have any questions, I'll be around all today and after church and things. So love to chat with you more. But thank you once again for your time today and for your thoughts, prayers, and support of MLS today and in the future and in the past. Thank you.